Everybody was scared to buy dealerships. I didn't really have any more knowledge than anybody else, but every recession comes to an end. So I wrapped my arms around him and I said, hey, I'll teach you to run a $100 million business in 5 years. If I was Stellantis, I would give the US-based leadership the tools that they need to be successful and be competitive in the market. It doesn't always matter what offense you run, but whatever offense you're running, you got to run it well.
Aaron Zeigler on the CDG podcast. Aaron, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on. Should I call you a car dealer or a media savant? I don't know which one to choose.
I think I'll go with car dealer.
I think so too. So you've done pretty well in that realm, to say the least.
Yeah, we've got a great team behind us.
I love it. We're going to talk all about it. We're going to talk about the market. We're going to talk about acquisitions. We're going to talk about your podcast. We're going to talk about power sports. So a lot to cover. As usual, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into this industry?
Yeah, so my dad started out when he graduated high school, couldn't afford to go to college. He started selling cars in the summer, made enough money to go to college, sold his way through college. And then when he was 26 years old, the dealership in the next town over had been bankrupt 3 times, basically got it for nothing. So he jumped right from selling cars to owning a dealership. And over the course of his career, he turned around a bunch of stores and ended up with 5 dealerships. So I went to college, didn't know what I wanted to do growing up, if I wanted to be in the business or not. But after my senior year of high school, I sold my first car and just fell in love with the business. And it's all I wanted to do is sell cars from then on out. So graduated college, went to NADA Academy, worked in every position coming up through the organization, and then took over as president when I was 28.
Tell me about, so you started in this business selling cars. Is that what you were just saying?
I did, yeah. In high school, I worked in parts and service, but call it my first kind of real job was selling cars. And that's where I really fell in love with the business. What
was it for you that actually attracted you to the industry? I mean, clearly, family business, understood, but I'm always interested to know that, what actually led you to sticking around and wanting to kind of grow with the business?
So I grew up as a sports fanatic, played all kinds of sports, raced jet skis and played hockey. And every time you score a goal in hockey, you win a race in jet ski and you get this adrenaline rush. It was the exact same thing when you sell a car. It was like you had this huge adrenaline rush and it was just so much fun to help customers out. Customers are excited when they're buying a car. And I did it the first time and just absolutely loved it. And to this day, I don't go through the whole process of selling cars, but every time a friend of mine buys a car or a family member, you still get that adrenaline rush.
Yeah, I know. You definitely do. It's funny because Russ is a creator who is part of our CDG creator network, which is really just a fancy term for other automotive influencers who, we exclusively work with here. I spoke with him the other day and he said the similar thing. He's got incredible opportunities within media and he actually put a post about this on Instagram and he said, like, I want to keep selling cars because people get addicted to that adrenaline rush. It's funny because I know the feeling. I definitely didn't want to stay, I always wanted to do more and different things, but the feeling can be very addictive and it's just fun, especially when you get that yes and you make that sale.
Yeah, you gotta, this is a business that you gotta love it to be good at it. And you got to live it every single day, every single minute of the day. And we enjoy it a lot.
Before we get into nitty gritty, give us a sense of your scale, your brands. Just give us a little high level overview of the organization.
We've got 41 locations. We're based out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, but we've got a lot of dealerships around Chicago and in Wisconsin and Indiana as well. So really kind of Midwest based. We've got a lot of larger volume stores. So kind of run the gamut with franchises. We have all the domestics, most of the high lines, BMW, Mercedes, Jaguar, Land Rover, Maserati. And then we got most of the high volume imports, Toyota, Honda, Nissan. So we really kind of run the gamut with most of the franchises out there.
How have you scaled, right? What's been your strategy with acquisitions?
Yeah. So in 2002, when I took over the organization, we didn't have a lot of structure. So we really kind of spent the next 5 years building structure, building culture, building up people. We started Zeigler University at that time to develop people going forward. We hired recruiters, and we did about a 5-year period. We didn't do a lot of growth. Then all of a sudden, the recession hit in 2008, and everybody was scared to buy dealerships. And I didn't really have any more knowledge than anybody else, but every recession comes to an end, because if it doesn't, we're all screwed, right? So we started buying dealerships in 2000, 2008, 2009, really kind of buying them on the cheap. And all of a sudden, the market got good. We turned these things around, started doing really well. So for the first 7-8 years we were buying dealerships, we were really buying underperforming dealerships and making them perform. And it was a great return on investment. Well, then as you get going, you get growing a little bit as an organization. So it was in 2010, we hit 300 million in sales. As a team, we put out a goal to get to $1 billion in sales in 10 years by 2020. And we did it by 2016, and then by 2020 we were at $2 billion in sales. But as what happens is you get bigger and you learn more. We had a lot of great people that were coming up through the organization that had the ability to take over dealerships. We started buying bigger dealerships, and really in the absolute best franchises, in the best locations, biggest volume stores that we could out there. And that's really kind of been our model the last 6 or 7 years. But you got to kind of build into doing that, because you don't have the bankroll to do that when you first start out.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's break that down. So first question there, Zeigler University, explain that to us in as simple as possible.
So I went to NADA Academy, which is a great program when I was right out of college, taught me how to run dealerships. I basically got 10 years worth of information in 1 year. It's so hard to send people out to Virginia to go through school that we basically created our own school. So that's where I really got the idea. And I said, you know what? We have to start training people day one. So day one, every employee that comes to work for us goes through what we call Keys to Success. It's like a new hire orientation program, but new hire orientation program doesn't sound very exciting. Keys to Success sounds a lot better. So we teach them what sets us apart from the competition, how we treat customers, how we treat each other, what our culture's like, what our history's like, what we're trying to accomplish. And then we have basically 6 levels of Zeigler University that we can take somebody from literally day one in the car business up to running multiple dealerships. We have a really extensive platform that we build out that has over 1,500 videos on it. And the videos, we've realized that training needs to be shorter, not longer. A lot of the videos are 5 to 7 minutes. We do a lot of live training, a lot of live classes. We do a lot of, as you get going in Zeigler University, the next level is what we call our aspiring leaders. So those are younger people that want to get into leadership positions. And that's a 6-month-long curriculum. Then ultimately, the kind of the top level is what we call our performance group. And those are people that we're training to run businesses, run dealerships. And I run that class myself. So as it goes along, it starts out with 2,700 employees going through training, and we have about 10 people at any one time going through the performance group.
Wow. I mean, you've built a hell of a machine. It's funny when you mention all these videos, the first thing that comes to my mind is what an opportunity to take that and license that to the industry. I mean, that's powerful, especially given the fact that you're a scale.
Yeah, we really think it's best in class out there. I've never seen anything like it. I think we could go out and market it, but it's just not what we do. We like to run car dealerships, not run universities. So, and then we also bring in a lot of outside speakers into the organization that everybody in the company has access to, people that have done really unique things in life. So you're kind of learning from all different types of people in different walks of life and how we apply that back to our organization.
For anyone listening to this that maybe says, wow, I wish my dealership offered that, and they don't live in a market where they could work for you, or they are a dealer, an owner, a GM, and they say, wow, I think I need that, or I'm aspiring to grow and I want to create something. How did you get started, right? When you say with Zeigler University, it's a super intimidating statement, to be honest with you. I hear that, I'm like, holy, you've literally built a school. And by the way you just described it, sounds pretty impressive. But you've also been doing this for over a decade. So how did you get started with building out something like this?
So it started out really simple with, when I got into business, it was like, hey, there's your desk, good luck. And it was kind of sink or swim. You kind of had to learn on your own. And I'm like, boy, if we could teach people to do things the right way right off the bat. So when we started hiring people coming out of college, imagine, you get a 4-year degree and you go home and tell mom and dad you're going to sell cars for a living. That's kind of a tough conversation. So what we would do is we'd go into colleges and we'd talk to them about, hey, we'll teach you to run a $100 million business. And that's really attractive to people. And then we show them how we've done this time and time again. So in 2016, we're based out of Kalamazoo. Western Michigan University is based out of here. And that year, their football team went undefeated, went to the Cotton Bowl, and their coach told me their quarterback was one of the best leaders he's ever seen. So I wrapped my arms around him and I said, hey, I'll teach you to run a $100 million business in 5 years. And that was really attractive to him. There's a lot of people trying to hire him. And today he runs our dealerships in Kalamazoo.
Tell me more about, so now fast forwarding, right? You mentioned 08, 09, you made lots of acquisitions. I can imagine that your strategy has evolved over the years and, till today. I mean, we're way past that now. But you mentioned underperforming. What have you really looked for historically with your acquisitions? Like, has this been pretty formulaic? Or is every deal, a quote unquote snowflake deal, they're all different and they all have their nuances? How do you think about acquisitions?
They're all a little different. But back in 2008, I was looking for dealerships that I could afford. So like the first 15 dealerships I bought were all losing money. Not one of them was making money. And we got them to make money. You're able to buy them fairly inexpensive when they're not making money. And we would turn them around and it would be an unbelievable return on investment. But as you begin to grow and you get larger, it gets harder and harder to be able to do that. And you go slower if you're trying to turn around dealerships. So in about 2015, we realized, boy, we've got a pretty good bankroll right now. We can start going after the best dealerships out there in the biggest markets.
The blue chips. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's really been our focus the last, 8 or 9 years is to go after those because now we have the bankroll to be able to do it. We've taken no outside money. We haven't done private equity or anything like that. So it's just our money and traditional banking relationships out there that we built this on.
Reinvesting in the business. Now, if I said, you know what, Aaron, throwing you to the wolves, you got to start from the bottom and you got to go acquire another store. What are you looking for? Like any specific franchise come to mind or a specific of quote unquote like underperformance you're looking for, service, used car? Like, is there anything specific you're looking for?
So first thing we look for, single most important thing is location, because you can't move a franchise very far. So you've got to have a good location. And we're looking for locations that are either high volume, high traffic areas or areas that are going to grow over the next 20 years. So we don't want to go into a market that looks like it's like a declining market or things are going to get worse there going forward.
When you say declining, are you referring to population or just like, governance? What are you referring to?
I think more not even population so much is just the areas in decay. Like it's, older stuff. There's nothing exciting there. We all know like when we go to an area that's exciting, all of a sudden they have new restaurants and, the kind of the trendier type areas. And you can see where they have a really good leadership there and vision of what they're going to do, that people are investing in those type of cities. That's where we want to be at going forward. And then once you have the location, then it comes down to the franchise, right? So you've got to have major franchises out there. So we're looking to buy tier 1 franchises, not kind of the tier 3 franchises. Ultimately, if we have a dealership that has the right location and the right franchise, then we have people that want to run those because it's an advantage to them. They can make more money. It's a better return for the organization and they can perform at a really high level.
This episode is brought to you by the Auto Hauler Exchange. Auto Hauler Exchange is changing how vehicle shippers and carriers can connect and work together. Now, if you need to ship a car, you can work with carriers all over the country directly. And if you transport cars, you don't have to look through brokerage boards to find good, fair jobs anymore. By eliminating the middleman, all shipments on Auto Hauler Exchange come directly from the owner of the vehicle being shipped, with carriers receiving real shipment opportunities at direct pricing. Auto Hauler Exchange helps shippers and carriers work together easily and clearly, adding transparency and making better partnerships. Get off the auto hauling roller coaster by getting on the Auto Hauler Exchange. To learn more, visit autohaulerexchange.com or click the link in the show notes below.
Who are you in terms of stores? And again, I'm assuming here that you still have the acquisition switch turned on. What are like the most exciting franchises to you right now?
Yeah, so we never really stop in acquisition mode. We bought 6 dealerships last year. So last year we bought 2 Subaru dealerships. One of them was one of the largest Subaru stores in the country. It's right across from the factory in Lafayette. We've done really well with Subaru. That's a new one for us. All of a sudden, 4 years ago, we didn't have any Subaru dealerships. Now we've got 4 of them, and we've done great with them. The Highlines are doing really well right now. Mercedes, BMW, Land Rover are great. The high volume imports, Toyota and Honda, we've done really, really well with those brands. On the domestic side, it's kind of interesting. Ford was a franchise that was maybe kind of down on its luck, and all of a sudden Ford's starting to get stronger right now as well. We've got a handful of Ford stores.
When you say it's starting to get stronger, what does that mean?
They're the volume's starting to come back, and maybe the excitement in the brand. They're starting to have the right incentives out there for consumers. So stores starting to perform at a pretty good level.
Mm-hmm. Did you invest in the Model E program that they shut down yesterday?
So I've got 4 Ford dealerships. One of them was under construction in Chicago, so we went all in on Model E. I didn't see it on the other 3 Ford stores, and our guys didn't want to move forward with that. The program made absolutely no sense, so we did it at 1 out of 4.
Got it. And then were you part of the lobbying efforts to get it overturned? I mean, how do you feel about the overall program and the fact that Ford shut it down?
Yeah, so you're probably talking about the lawsuit in Illinois. There was 29 dealers. I was not a part of that. I'm a big believer in you don't sue manufacturers. You got to, even if you don't like what they're doing, you got to kind of partner with them from a relationship standpoint. But the Model E program made absolutely 0 sense from the beginning. It cost dealers a tremendous amount of money. It was foolish money that we had to spend. It added no value to the customers. They were just completely off base on their thinking on that. And, when the EVs came out, there's a place for EVs in the market, but it's not going to be 100% of the market. Nothing's going to be 100% of the market. So when they said, oh, it's, these new customers, are going to come in and buy EVs. No, it's the same consumer that's out there. They're just deciding between an EV hybrid gas engine. So they really missed the mark on that one, but that's business. Fortunately, they recovered. They killed the program this week, and hopefully they come out with something a lot better going forward.
And just some added context for anyone listening that's not familiar, but Ford had this program where dealers would get, quote unquote, certified, to sell EVs, which really was primarily centered around installing chargers at their facilities, and required a very hefty investment. I believe that the higher end of the investment was about $1 million per dealership for some dealerships.
So Ford originally said it was $1.25 million per dealership is what they told the dealer body. Everybody's in a little different situation. It's really expensive to run the electrical is what really costs a lot of money in that program. But also Ford did some extremely expensive training that they had everybody go down to Atlanta to do. And every one of our people that went down there and any other dealer that I talked to said there's absolutely no value in the training. So it kind of felt like they were making a lot of money on the backs of their dealers with that program. So hopefully they'll make it right with their dealers, and there'll be some type of payback for the money that we spent that was not well spent, and we got no value out of whatsoever.
I was going to ask you about that. Do you think some form of reimbursement is realistic?
Yeah, I think they absolutely should. I mean, it was forced down our throats. It was, do you want to sell, all the Ford vehicles going forward, sign this, pay $1.25 million. It was ill-conceived. They had a third-party company that was doing the training. That company had absolutely no clue. We're spending $25,000 a day on training for our people, plus flights and hotels, and taking them away from the store. And it was very ill-conceived. There's no question about that. And I think Ford would tell you that right now too, that they didn't have a good plan there.
So as you're speaking, I'm on your website and I'm counting the number of stores you have of one specific franchise, which has been the hot topic lately, Stellantis.
I got 5 of them.
You have 5 of them. I just counted as you were speaking. So the elephant in the room. What's your like start high level for a second, right? Like, how do you feel about where things are at and where, the outlook that they've provided? Like, what's your, we're two friends sitting at the bar, right? What are you telling me right now?
So on the high lines, the reason why I think they're doing really well right now is at the top end of the market, people aren't so maybe
price sensitive,
yeah, on interest rates, right? So interest rates are driving the cost of cars. So
or payment sensitive, sure.
Yeah. So if a guy's going to buy a $120,000 Mercedes, he's got the money to do that. He's going to buy that no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's 120 or 130. He's going to buy the car. When you get into the person that's living paycheck to paycheck, and all of a sudden interest rates go up, boy, that's a tougher gig. And interest rates are about average now where they're at over the past 60 years. The problem is in the last 20 years, they've been really low. So anybody that hasn't been in the business in the last 20 years is trying to figure out how to compete in a market like this, especially when we're coming off a market as hot as it was during COVID. So getting back to the question on Stellantis. So two of my stores in Chicago are two of the largest volume Chrysler Dodge Jeep stores in America. We've done really, really well with the brand. Jeep has been hot as can be for a long time, but they've dramatically overproduced and they haven't supported the dealers right now. They don't have the right incentives out there. They upped the price too high on their vehicles. They're having $15,000 price increases per year. They have come back and re-invoiced some of those vehicles, but they're just not overly competitive right now. And they got to get back competitive again, and they got to do it fast, because I've never seen a brand drop more market share quicker than what Stellantis has done in the last 6 months.
What's the secret to becoming competitive? Is it just trimming prices, or have they created product that people don't want?
So they've got good product. The Dodge truck's really good. Jeep's a great brand, but you have to be able to hit the right price point, and they don't have the right combination right now. They haven't supported the dealers from an incentive standpoint, and then they've way overbuilt on cars. So dealers are absolutely loaded with inventory right now. Everybody said they weren't going to do that, and a lot of the brands have been disciplined. They were one brand that was not disciplined, so they're back to pounding on the dealers, try to take extra inventory. They're back to really kind of distressed selling, but they're not competitive with their incentives right now. And they got to make some changes really fast. They're going to be in trouble.
Closing thought on this topic. If Stellantis leadership is listening to this right now, what message do you have for them?
So listen to your American leadership. They're trying to run it out of Europe, and they're trying to do everything from cutting costs right now. That doesn't work. And you've got to get back. You've got to be competitive. You got to have people running this thing on the sales side that understand the market. You got to give your BC directors the ability to put the incentives out there to move the vehicles. They can change this thing overnight. I could turn this thing in 1 minute. Just put the right incentives out there and the right programs, come back with the leasing programs, and they'll start selling cars at the same level that they were before. But right now, they're giving up a lot of market share to brands that are coming on right now, like Hyundai and Kia are kind of eating their lunch.
Mm-hmm. So me putting my capitalist hat on, right? Hague, the buy sell advisory, they published that Stellantis blue sky multiples. For anyone that's not familiar with the term, just what these stores are trading at, the actual dealerships, their multiple was slightly declined. And so I'm curious to know from your end, right? Would you acquire additional Stellantis dealerships right now? I know you're a little biased also because you're heavy on Stellantis dealerships, but I'm saying, like, do you think that this is like the trough and there's upside? Where are we at on the spectrum? How do you think about this?
So right now, the Stellantis leadership has given us no confidence that they're going to make the right decisions going forward. So I would not go ahead and buy a Stellantis dealership. And so I know Hague, I see the Hague report, right? There's a little bit of a lag there on that. So he's looking at what's been sold over the last 6 or 12 months, slight decline. I think right now there would be a dramatic decline if there's even a market out there for people to jump into, because how do you value a Stellantis dealership right now with what they're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we get dealerships that we're selling 400 and some vehicles a month that are doing less than half of that right now, and it was almost overnight that happened with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's for someone like yourself to say that, it's a bold statement. I mean, there's that famous line, like, the market abhors uncertainty, but to think that there's truly like a lack of liquidity for this type of asset, that's pretty meaningful.
Yeah, and I've never seen anything change as fast as they have in the market. It was a rapid decline. The good thing is it's a rapid decline. They could get a rapid acceleration here if they get their act together really quickly. So yeah.
Yeah, like no different than Ford. Ford was declining, a year and a half ago, a year ago.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like Ford, when they came out with their Mach-E, it wasn't selling well. And all of a sudden, at the end of last year, they put a program on it, a lease program that was really good, and they started selling at a very strong rate.
Sort of, let's extrapolate this a little bit further. Next 18 months, this was actually a specific question that another large private dealer group CEO submitted to me. But they said, like, what's your outlook on just the dealership market and, mergers and acquisitions, right? Are we going to see more like distressed, opportunistic types of deals out there? Are we not? What's your outlook?
So I think right now there's a little bit of a gap because you have people that are looking at what they made during COVID. So we call them COVID earnings now. They weren't necessarily real, and that's not going to predict what's going forward. But the thought was, hey, it's also not going to go back. Profitability is not to go back where it was in 2017, 18, 19. The difference right now, though, is interest rates and floor plan costs. So interest rates up, 5%. So for every $100 million in inventory that a group's carrying, that's another $5 million in cost. So a lot of the big groups have $300-400 million in inventory. Now you're talking $15-20 million more in costs that are invisible to a customer, that there's no value there for a customer, so you can't recoup those costs. So is what we think is going to happen is, I think there's going to be maybe one rate cut this year. I think that there's a little bit of a gap right now between sellers and buyers. I think the sales that you're going to go through is maybe, hey, somebody's in financial trouble and it's a little distressed right now and they want to get rid of it, or they want to off maybe some of their lower performing stores. And then I think things are going to get a lot better going forward. So we're looking, and once they start cutting rates, we think there's going to be at least 6 rate cuts in a row, and that'll dramatically lower the borrowing costs from a floor plan expense standpoint. But the other thing you got is there's about 12 million cars that were not sold during COVID, new cars that would have been sold if we just had like a generalized SAR out there. So the same thing happened in 2008. The SAR went from 15 million down to 9.5 million. We made those units back up in 2010, 11, 12. So if you look at that 5-year gap, we still sold the same number of cars. We just didn't do it in 08. Right now, I think sales would be at least 20% higher, 25% higher if rates were lower. So as rates start to drop back down, that pent-up demand is still out there. Because the average car going into COVID was 12 and a half years old, which was an all-time record. We're at 14 years old right now. So service department revenue is up. We're averaging about 6,000 hours more this year than what we were last year per month in service. Like, it just keeps going and going and going.
This episode is brought to you by my very own car dealership guy industry job board. CDG Jobs is revolutionizing how talent connects with top automotive companies. Here's a shocker. We're not using any fancy technology or AI. We literally built a simple HTML job board. That's it. But it works really, really well. And the best part, it's completely free for CDG listeners to post and fill positions at their firm. So I'm sure you're wondering, what sets us apart? Well, when companies hire through CDG Jobs, they're choosing from a pool of the most informed candidates in the industry. Don't wait. Whether you're hiring or seeking a new opportunity, visit cdgjobs.com today or click the link in the show notes below. That's cdgjobs.com.
I want to do a quick spark notes for any listeners that, maybe missed a part of that. And I also want to ask you about this underproduction, right? So I've been very vocal about, we've underproduced cars since the pandemic. And that's, we sold just fewer cars each year, which obviously has lots of reverberating effects on the industry, and fewer used lease returns returning, which fewer used cars, and yada yada yada. Do you really think that the pent-up demand out there still exists, or has the market just found a new balance with people driving slightly older cars, focused on repairing their vehicles a little bit more, and taking advantage of leasing, right? Do you really think that there's that 25% pent-up demand still to this point?
Yeah, so I think kind of a hybrid. So people are keeping their cars longer, but eventually you can only keep your car so long, and then you've got to do something. So if you think and you go, half the average age is 14 years old, that means half the cars are over 14 years old. Going back 14 years, that's to 2010. So half the cars are 6, 7, 8, 9s. They're gonna, about 15 million cars get junked every year or get totaled out. So if we produce at less than that, and we have about 300 million cars on the road, that number keeps going down every year. Population, slight increase. It's a mathematical equation. At some point, when the affordability gets back there, or the people in their mind that the rates are down, I think you're going to see a big spark going forward in the amount of cars sold.
And again, that spark knows what I was saying. So you were really, again, for anyone that's not familiar with SAR, I mean, you were really referring to the amount of new cars sold in the year and how that has been creeping back up. So super helpful. I want to shift the conversation to your group again, and you operate in several different states. Are there any key differences for you operating in, Chicago versus in Michigan, right? These different states and expanding far and wide. What are the key differences for you in those different markets?
Yeah, so Chicago's got 9 million people, so obviously a lot bigger market, but you might have a dealership every 3 or 5 miles, where in Michigan, the closest, like we have BMW in Kalamazoo, the next closest competitor is 60 miles away. So you've got bigger territories, less people. And each market is where it really differs is on the advertising and marketing side of things. Something that works really well in Chicago won't work in Michigan, or something that's great in Indiana doesn't work in Wisconsin. So advertising is very localized, even though it's on, most of it's digital that we're doing, still different things run hot and cold in certain markets.
Who would you say is the marketing brains within your dealer group? And I ask that because you are, you're on a podcast, right? You do plenty of the NIL. I saw you do some involvement with the NIL, the college athlete. I mean, you're really creative on the marketing front, or I would say you're more creative than the average dealer that I've come across. So who's leading the marketing on your end? What's that philosophy?
It's we have a pretty flat organization. So when we have somebody running a dealership, they're really like the owner of that dealership. We give them a lot of autonomy to run it. I want guys that are going to have that entrepreneurial zest, and I don't want to have a lot of rules on them. I don't want to micromanage them, anything like that. You can't do that with as many stores as we have. But because of the size of the organization, sometimes things kind of come our way. So we've had a lot of success. We have a hot air balloon. Well, the reason why that came about was because my Maserati sales manager.
Why did that come about?
My Maserati sales manager is one of the top hot air balloon pilots in the world. He used to run the Tony the Tiger balloon for Kellogg for a lot of years. So he came to me and he runs a bunch of festivals, and he was selling a ton of cars to other hot air balloon enthusiasts. So we got this hot air balloon, and everybody, when they see a hot air balloon, just like you're smiling right now, people smile and they take pictures of it.
A hot air balloon.
Yeah, they take pictures of it. They put it online, and we use it to give employees rides, and we use it for awards and stuff like that. So we've had a lot of fun with it. We got involved in NASCAR a number of years ago, so we're the primary sponsor for a NASCAR team with Spire, and our driver's having a great year. He's a young guy. He's 21 years old. He's leading the Rookie of the Year standings, and we do a lot of things with NASCAR. A lot of business gets done behind the scenes with NASCAR, in addition to the marketing opportunities. And we've done a few Neil deals with some of the college athletes too that we're involved with. So it's trying to do some creative things, fun things that help you build a brand out there. Because even though we're Midwest based, we sell cars coast to coast because of the internet. So in some respects, we're a local brand, but we're also a national brand as well.
That's incredible. So I think what you said is super important. I really believe in this, and it's that you lean into the strengths of your team. That's what I can tell from the outside, at least, right? Like, you didn't wake up one day and said, I want to have a freaking hot air balloon, right? But you have a team member that, has experience with that. And I think what I call this at Car Dealership Guy, and obviously we're 99, we're light years smaller than you are as a business, but I love to call this like going with the grain, right? Like, someone from your team has some competency in something that they're, maybe passionate about, or they just enjoy. Well, great. Like, can we channel that in a direction that benefits the organization, and it scratches that itch for that, human, and like everybody wins. I love that.
Yeah. So the key word you said there is passionate. So if we get somebody that's really passionate about something, I'm like, look, I'm gonna financially support them. I don't even know if it's gonna work, but if they're really excited about it, it'll probably work because of how passionate they are. So, I try to have my first answer be yes on things and not no, because I like people doing creative ideas. When they came to me originally and wanted to start a podcast, I don't even think I knew what a podcast was back then, but they're passionate about it, and I said, "Yeah, let's go for it." Then it started working, and next thing you know, we built a studio, and we've got an internal and an external podcast. It's been great.
I think I mean, likely from what I can tell from outside, probably a big reason why you've been so successful, because you're spreading your chips across the table in smart, calculated ways. And, these are, quote unquote risk. I mean, some things are not much of a risk, but they are at the end of the day, like opportunities where you don't know what they could really explode into. So it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. Quite often people go, boy, you're not like any other dealer we've ever met. And we kind of take that as a compliment, because we're trying to do some different things out there, trying to do some fun things, and those type of things get people really excited as well. Where we come in as an auto group is we really share ideas between the dealership. So once a month we get together with all of our general managers, our executive team. We base the meetings out of Kalamazoo, but everybody's at their dealership, so they video conference in. We kind of did Zoom before Zoom was a thing. And we basically run our own 20 group meeting. Everybody brings the best idea. We have different subjects each month that we bring the ideas on. And it's a great way for us to have something that's really working at one or two dealerships and roll it out to 41 dealerships almost overnight.
How do you structure these meetings? Like, what are they actually? Okay, so 20, or let's just say 20 people show up in a room. Now what?
Yeah, so it's actually a lot more people than that. Is probably closer to 100 people. But what we do is each month we rotate a department head. So 1 month is new cars, next month is parts, then service, then used cars. So we come in, meeting start at 9:00, and I kind of got ADD, so I can't be in more than a 2-hour meeting. So we're going to be out of there by 11:00. And what happens is each dealership brings the best idea. They got 90 seconds to present it, and then we talk about it and have a little discussion on the idea that they have. And then we have discussion topics based on whatever the department is. So say we have F&I in, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, question might be, what banks are great for somebody that's got good credit, but a lot of negative equity, or what banks are giving you the most back end, stuff like that. And so you got this connectivity with the department heads and the general managers and the executive team to be able to share information. And that's really, really powerful, because no one person has all the ideas. So 1 minute you're the teacher and the next minute you're the student in these meetings. Then the department heads, once they're done with that part of the meeting, the executive team sticks around. We spend about a half an hour just talking about anything big picture with the organization or the industry that goes on. And we have an agenda we put together and kind of go through that. And then at the end, it's open discussion on anything anybody wants to talk about. And one of the things that we've done is we build a really, really tight knit group. So I don't even call us a team anymore. We call ourselves a family. And our dealership.
That's a very controversial statement, by the way.
Yeah.
Lots of people listen to this. I'm like, say, well, you can't, family's forever. Team is, not forever.
So we want our people to be together forever. So I've got a lot of people. The only company they've ever worked for is our company, including myself. And we've got a lot of people that are 50 years old that have been here for 30 years and have been able to grow with the organization. So we really do look at it as when we bring somebody in, and I've never had a general manager quit before. And I think the reason is because of this family type feel. So even though we're a larger organization, it doesn't feel corporate-y at all. It still has this family feel to it. And that kind of goes back to, my number one goal in every one of these dealerships is to have a world-class culture. And with a culture, it's really hard to explain it, but you can feel it. So I say, look, if you get up in the morning and you're excited to go to work, you're excited to work with the other people, that's a world-class culture. And we do a lot of social events with our team and also their spouses as well. So they've all become really good friends. So they're talking on a daily basis back and forth what's going on. I think that's a competitive advantage for us as an organization.
You just mentioned, 100 people in these meetings. I'm curious to know, what are the key attributes that you look for in team members, or asked differently, right? The people that have grown the most with you and have come, the furthest with their careers. What are the characteristics that they've displayed? And this could be relevant to someone listening to this, maybe that wants to get ahead in their career, or it can be an owner or a GM that wants to, grow people, right? Like, what are these key characteristics that you're looking for in the highest performers that you've been around?
So we can teach people the business. You don't need to know anything about this business. We can teach you all that, but there's certain things we can't teach. We can't teach you to want it. We can't teach you to have that 12-cylinder engine. If you've got a 4-cylinder engine, we can't make you into a 12-cylinder engine. But we have 5 team values. It's passion, reputation, integrity, drive, execution. And those are kind of our key drivers that we're looking for. But somebody that wants to grow, somebody that's willing to listen. I want somebody that's humble, that, we're all going to make mistakes. You say you make a mistake, you just learn from it. Don't make the mistake again. It's okay to fail. I just tell our people, fail fast and move on. If you're not trying enough new things, if you don't fail once in a while at something. I'm looking for people that are very loyal, that want to be here for a long time and just are driven, because you can't teach somebody to want it. You can't teach somebody to want to be number one. You either got that or you don't.
And of course, it wouldn't be a CDG podcast if I didn't plug the CDG job board, where the job board that I set up that is growing really fast, and you should absolutely be using it to hire. So we'll get you on there. We'll send you an invite, and hopefully we can help Zeigler find some other great talent. And for anyone listening to this podcast, we'd love to have you as well. It's growing super quickly.
That'd be great, because the reality is it's easier to buy dealerships than it is to find people to run them. So we're constantly looking for good people that can help to grow with us. And I think the other part of that culture piece of having that world-class culture is ultimately people got to make really good money, and they got to be able to share in the rewards of it. So even though we don't have owners, we treat all of our executive team like owners, and it's even better because they don't have to pay money coming in, but they get really good, consistent cash flow and big pay plans out there. And the sky's the limit at what you can make in our organization.
Yeah, we've had really good success on the job board with any management position and above, and also like corporate positions and stuff like that. I think we're trying to continue growing the bottom, the salesperson or the entry level. It's a little tough when you go local, but we've just had phenomenal results from dealers, and it's free, by the way. So that's the other cool part. There's paid options, but it's free to start and to post and whatnot. So I want to ask you a bit more personal questions as well. What's on your mind nowadays? Or as my favorite and my infamous line on the podcast, what's anything keeping you up at night nowadays?
I think you're always thinking about business and how you can improve your business. And I say, the economy's kind of a game, so we don't create the rules of the game or the rules of the economy, but you got to take what's out there right now, and you got to run your business different. So it was interesting. We've always been on a fast turn with used cars, and all of a sudden COVID hits, and for the first time ever, cars start appreciating. So all of a sudden we're like, wait a minute, we don't want to off cars because they're going to be worth more than what they are now. Well, now you've got some pretty big depreciation on used cars where they're depreciating 2 to 3 times as fast as what they used to. So we have to turn them substantially quicker than what we did before. So I think what we talked about earlier, our cost of business is up right now because of the interest rates. So that comes back to turning your new and used car inventories absolutely as fast as you possibly can, being very efficient. We always say our first loss is our best loss, and keep that fresh inventory coming in. So I think business right now and profitability is really tied around fast inventory turn. And then, probably the other thing, the real uncertainty in our industry right now is what's going to happen in November. And there's 2 very contrasting styles out there of what could happen in this industry with rules and regulations. Well, we're seeing. I'm a big believer that government needs to kind of stay out of business, and the market should work itself out. And right now, a lot of things are kind of being forced that probably don't make a lot of sense. But it's either going to continue down that path and get even more rules and more regulation and more kind of forcing things toward EVs, or it's going to loosen up a lot. So I think for our industry, this election's going to be probably the most important election in the history of the car business, with the direction that the car business is going to go going forward. So you just wish November would get here tomorrow. So either way, we're going to be covered. We're going to figure out how to be successful out there. Whoever's run the country, we've always been successful, but it's going to dramatically change what you do in business going forward based on who's running the country in the future.
I know I had a bunch of people reach out to me after my podcast with Brett Morgan, and they mentioned that they either reached out to him for an opportunity or, we're looking for a job. So my question to you is if people are listening to this and are like, wow, like I want to be part of Zeigler, I want an opportunity at that organization. What roles do you have open? What opportunities are you looking to fill? I mean, what message do you have to these people?
So we kind of do it different than everybody else. We are always looking for talented people. I'll hire every talented person that I can get, whether we have a position for them or not. And then we'll create a position for them going forward. So we're constantly, building our team, building up our people that want to work in a world-class culture where it's a lot of fun to come to work, where you can thrive, where you can make decisions, where you can make extremely good money. That's kind of our MO, and that's why I think we have the longevity that we do. And the only way that we can continue to build a company is to have that longevity and to have everybody working together and going towards a common goal out there. And I think that's the strength of our organization.
You built a hell of a machine. Any closing thoughts?
No, appreciate you having me on today. It was great discussion. And it's going to be an exciting future. So look forward to it.
Had a blast. Aaron, thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.